everyone. Welcome back to the question where you have the questions and I have the answers. I know. I'm putting off the Second Amendment. I was going to talk about it, but then this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. So I'm going to talk about it. And it's the inauguration, so woo, Biden and Kamala in the White House, but this is not what it's about. I'm going to talk about exclusion and gatekeeping in the LGBTQ plus community because, oh my god, it is so bad. It's so dumb. Some of the arguments are just stupid and it's so harmful. And it pisses me off to no end that there are people like this. When this community is supposed to be a safe place for people who are not cishet. And why can't we just let it be that? Okay, so I'm going to talk about a few main controversies that I have seen. I think the three biggest controversy is the bisexual versus pansexual discourse. It's probably the biggest one, and if you've been in the LGBTQ plus community for like a long period of time, you will be well versed in this and have your own opinions and so on and so forth. Asexual, aromantic, so aspect discourse, and just debating whether they should be part of the LGBTQ plus community or not. And the lesbian label discourse. Those are like the main three controversies that I've seen. I'm going to talk about them. And just a disclaimer at the beginning, I in no way am saying that my opinion is final. I'm not saying I'm correct. I'm just saying that this is my views on it. These are my opinions. And I only really take part in one of these communities, one of these discourses. I am not a lesbian. I don't use a lesbian label. So I don't know as much about that discourse as I do about the other two, which I am actively a part of. So yeah, this is not my final word. I'm not saying I'm correct. If you disagree, that's cool. Just please be respectful about it, not just to me, but to everybody you disagree with. Because that's another big thing is that not only do we try to exclude people in the LGBT community, some people are just downright mean about it. And it's like people come to this community to try and escape, being excluded from or hated on, and for how they identify, and they don't need to come to this community and then have that behavior and that attitude continued, in this safe space, which is no longer being safe because of this discourse. So let's start with the asexual one first, just trying to get from the smaller discourses to the biggest one. So bi and pan will be last, and I'm not saying any of these is smaller or less important than the other. I'm just saying that as much as it's talked about, there's probably a lesser known discourse than the other two. So the aspect discourse is that there are people in the LGBTQ plus community who think that aspects aren't part of the LGBTQ plus community for a variety of reasons. There are people who be like, well, they aren't, asexuals or aromantics are not part of the community because they didn't suffer the same way, because they don't have it hard like us, they aren't oppressed. And first of all, making sure that only oppressed people can be part of the LGBTQ plus community is why? Why? LGBTQ plus is supposed to be anybody except for cishets. If someone is asexual or romantic, they're no longer heterosexual or heteroromantic. Also, someone who is ace or aro could be non-binary or trans and still be part of the community. We can't just assume that they're cishet because they're ace or aro, and that's what they choose to talk about the most. So there's that, but also just thinking that, because thinking that they aren't oppressed in certain ways. I'm not saying, and I'm not going to try and compare traumas and oppression, because you should never try and compare traumas or oppression, but just being because they are obviously, there is an obvious prejudice, as there is with the more known LGBTQ plus labels, we can't go and say that they aren't oppressed. Well, I saw one, and it was like, well, because you don't have different oppressions than us, you can't be a part of the LGBTQ plus community. And so it was like, we recognize that you are oppressed, but because your oppressions are the same as ours, you can't be in here. And it's like, what does that mean? It's like saying, it's like if, um, what is it? It's like saying that one person isn't experiencing sexism because someone else is experiencing sexism. It's like you guys, like dealt with the same issues. Well, your issues are invalid because because you don't have your own issues. You just have the same issues as everybody else. So it's like, isn't that the point of the LGBTQ plus community, is to give everybody a safe space from the issues, whether they're unique to this community or not? You know. And just to point out, like, yes, ace arrows do not experience the same oppression as the LGBTQ plus community, but they also do experience the same. It's like they experience the same in some aspects, but not in the others. And I think the biggest difference with the ace community, the aspect community, is that aspect is still considered a mental disorder, whereas homosexuality and bisexuality and all resulting labels are not. So people are less likely to know about aspect labels and are less likely to be accepted because people don't know this. Even if they do, they think it's a mental disorder. And if someone does identify as aspect, they can risk having their any like mental health, like medical medications taken away, like antidepressants or in medicine that helps with anxiety. I have a really bad stutter. I'm sorry. Well, it's not that bad, but like I can't talk. And so yeah, it's like they have their own issues, and it's different. Everyone's problems are different, and we shouldn't gatekeep based off of lack of problems or types of problems or whether someone has the same problems. And we shouldn't assume that someone has it better than you just because you don't know their problems. I am ace arrow as of right now. That's what I identify as. That's what I feel I am. And so, of course, I am biased towards wanting to be accepted in the LGBTQ plus community. But that's just my thoughts on it. Now, for the lesbian label discourse, there's been a lot of discourse about what being a lesbian means. And what I was taught was that lesbian is a woman who loves women and like is only in love with women, like how like there's just like women who are strictly in love with women or sexually attracted to women. And but now there are people who are non-binary saying, that they're calling themselves lesbians because they're strictly attracted to women. And people are debating about whether that's okay. Or people who are like bisexual or pansexual but like mostly attracted to women, saying that they're bi-pan lesbians. And I guess the discourse is whether that's okay or whether that goes against the label. I've seen arguments for both sides, saying that, lesbianism is just being only attracted to women, which then would argue that straight men could use that label. But maybe I'm not explaining it. Once again, I'm not as adverse in this discourse because I'm not a lesbian. I don't identify as one. And yeah, and I know there's labels for people, for non-binary humans who are strictly attracted to women. I think it's trixic, and then for strictly attracted to men, it'd be toric. I personally don't get the bi-pan lesbian because it's like if you have that preference, you could still be bi or pan, and you still identify with that. That's just me. And so I don't know. I can't really get along. That's just my thoughts. I don't know as much, but it's like why, just why? But then also people who get on like others for having micro labels. It's like, why can't we just be LGBT? And it's like, well, you didn't have instances like this, and more micro labels are kind of not needed, but like they are created to find answers to these problems so nobody gets offended by somebody they don't like or someone they don't agree with using the label for reasons they don't agree with or reasons they don't accept. And yeah. Now to get on with the main discourse, bisexuality versus pansexuality. Because it's long, it's complicated, it is so, oh my god. So basically, bisexuality versus pansexuality is a group of bisexuals, they call themselves battle axe bisexuals, believe that pansexuality is biphobic and contributes to bi erasure, and same thing with every other micro label that falls under that, attracted to multiple genders, or yeah, multiple genders, that sort of definition. And because bisexuality is mainstream, it is believed to be uh, attracted to two genders. When really people use it to be attracted to two or more genders, it is meant to be a very fluid definition. And they believe that because pansexuality and other micro labels exist, it is contributing to bi erasure by making it seem like bisexuality is only attracted to men and women and not attracted to all genders, the possibility of all genders, like it truly is. And there's also a whole long history that goes with it, including the Bi Manifesto and, of course, the Latin words, Latin definitions for bi and pan and what that implies. And it's very, very messy. And there are really rude people on both sides, because you have battle axe bisexuals who go on and be like, well, if you're pansexual, then you're biphobic and you're contributing to biracial and you're just like an overall terrible person and you better renounce your label now or, you're a terrible person who is destroying this community. And there are, pansexuals who hate bisexuals because of that sentiment. And it's really just like, why can't y'all just respect people's labels, you know? Me personally, I feel like bisexual is its own sexuality as well as an umbrella of that multiple gender attraction. Like bisexuality has that fluidness, whereas like the micro labels are specific instances, that aren't changing, whereas bisexuality can change, and some people like that freedom to change, and some people like that rigid, this is what I am, this is not going to change, that finality of it all. But at the same time, bisexuality can also be final if you choose for it to be, and it's honestly whatever you're comfortable with. And that is the thing, that's my belief, at least that is my firm belief. There are people who are like, well, labels shouldn't be for your comfort, they're to describe you and they need to be correct and have the most correct definition. And I'm like, but if it's correct to you, you choose how you're being described. I mean, and I joined this discourse because I identified as pan romantic for a bit, and now I'm aromantic. At least, and that might change. That might change. Labels are all fluid, and you never should feel like you're restricted to one label. Feel free to try as you see fit, and then, there's no rush. It's not like college, you have to declare your, like, your label to be a part of the LGBTQ plus community. You don't have to, like, go up to someone and be like, I identify as bisexual or pansexual, and then, you feel free to try all these labels. But yeah, it's really harmful, and just not, pansexual is better than bisexual or bisexual is better than pansexual. One's more correct. It's whatever you want to call yourself, and that I guess kind of goes back to the whole lesbian debate about whether non-binary people who are only attracted to women should be able to call themselves lesbians. And I feel like, I don't know, kind of like it's a read the room situation where it's like if people are, uncomfortable by it and they feel like they're diluting the label, maybe don't do that. But also like it's you live your life. But just like, I don't know, take into account people's thoughts and feelings on it. You don't want to like actually mess with a label and change its definition to dilute its true meaning. But at the end of the day, it's you and it's your label, and you can choose whatever you want. And one thing I found, it was like a whole post saying the people who are inclusive in the LGBTQ plus community are bad, because you shouldn't be inclusive to all, because you're bringing people who aren't LGBT and diluting the community and making it unsafe for others. And I'm like, micro labels make people not LGBT. But I guess they meant like only LGBT. Like, I guess people see that and they're like, you can only be LGBT or T, or a combination of the few, but you can't be anything outside of that. And I feel like that sentiment in itself is harmful, because once again, gatekeeping and being exclusionatory is the exact same thing we ran from. This community is supposed to be safe to, from the oppression of cishetes and that society. And gatekeeping within that community is counterproductive and counterintuitive and super hypocritical of everything that we as a community try to stand for. And I know that it's like this in many communities, not just the LGBTQ plus community. It's like that in feminism and racism and like feminist movements and anti-racist movements and so on and so forth. There's always going to be contradictions. People are going to have their own thoughts and belief in any movement and any community. And that's just how it is. People naturally divide and group together based off of interests, beliefs, or whatever. Which is why no matter how much we dislike them, we're always going to have political parties in this country. Maybe not just the main two, but we'll always have political parties because people are always grouped together. That's just how humans be. Humans are social creatures. They're not meant to be solitary, and they'll group together based off of anything. That's why if you look at letters and they say, hey, find the even ones, you will do it, because humans group together off these hidden things that could be there or could not be there. It's going to happen. But I believe that we should try to accept everybody, and just, if you don't agree with it, don't agree with it. Just don't be cruel and harmful about it, because telling somebody you can't be this label, or that's not actually your label, or you're doing this just to be, terrible to others, this makes you a bad person if you choose to do this, that's harmful. That's fucked up. That's the exact same sentiment that we ran from, or saying, well, you're not oppressed enough to be in this community, or you don't have your own issues, so you can't be part of this community, or just completely denying that, denying how they feel. That's also very harmful, and we shouldn't do that. So anyway, happy Inauguration Day. That's been like sitting in my mind for a while, and I finally just wanted to make this video because I have nothing better to do today. I love you all so much. Please love everybody, forgive everyone, especially yourself. Also, just to be clear, pedophilia is not fucking okay in the LGBTQ plus community or whatever. That is the one thing I say we should definitely exclude. If we're going to exclude anyone, exclude the pedophiles. Okay, so long and thanks for all the fish. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes.